to Choral Conversations presented by the Johns Creek Chorale and Tapestry Women's Ensemble. Before we start our choral conversations, we'd like to thank our patrons. And special thanks to Fulton County Arts and Culture. And funding for this program is provided by the Fulton County Board of Commissioners.
Hi, welcome to Choral Conversations, and today we are talking with Anne Schantz and Cory Schantz. They are our soloists for the Johns Creek Chorale's presentation of Handel's Messiah. And so I want to thank you guys for both being here today. And let's just go ahead and dive right in. So, Cory, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of talking about, this piece in general, it's an oratorio. We sing it every year. Kind of, what's been your experience with the work?
My experience with the work, goes back about 25 years, I guess. Actually longer, probably closer to 35 years. As a freshman at Oklahoma Baptist University, at the time, it was a really great experience at OBU where every other year we did a choral masterwork. Most often, students were used as soloists, occasionally faculty members. But here I was, a stupid freshman walking in and asked to audition, and I happened to have not a Messiah aria, but another Handel aria to use as my audition piece, and I sang my first. The solos were broken up at that point. I couldn't sing anything low at all, at all. So I was given,
and that's kind of hard because these are written for a low bass.
Yeah. Oh, at least there are almost three different singers. Because if you look later in the work, if you look at the trumpet shall sound, that sits in such a different place where you almost have to tune the voice or tune the transitions of the voice by maybe approaching the vowel shapes slightly differently. And then certainly when you have the people that walk it in darkness, I honestly couldn't sing that until about 5 years ago, where all of a sudden there are some things that just changed. Most of it's just age, but I mean, to this
kind of the lower extension. Is that what you're talking
about? Yeah. It starts from
weight in the lower part of his voice.
Yeah, it's before I could maybe pinch out some of those low notes, but now I have the ability to give them some actual color and some like Ann says, a little bit of weight. But it's all that stuff that hangs around down F, below the bass clef staff. But I still use the same score. I don't care what anybody is singing out of. I use the same score that I bought as a freshman in college. Everybody else just deal with it. I just figure it out. But
markings.
I have markings in that score that were made by my voice teacher in 1988. I don't understand what they mean. I have no idea what he said to me back then. But I still have them, and as a matter of fact, there's a moment in the video where I was trying to turn the page. I'm not sure I hope it didn't show, but my page, it's so old, just sort of came out as I turned it. So, but yeah, it's a great experience for me. It's become a real kind of like it's kind of like making a trip home every year. I mean, my voice, it's something that my voice likes to do, and I enjoy doing it every year.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because the first time I ever sang it, I was 18 or 19, and I was hiding it from my voice teacher because I was a kind of a baritone transitioning up to tenor, or I was a tenor who lost some of his high notes, just his senior year in high school. And so when I got to college, the little Episcopal church who did nothing but, 17th century and, 16th century polyphony hired me, which, I sounded awful doing that kind of stuff, but I got to sing, a Messiah with them as an 18-year-old, and I had no clue how the work worked. They said, Kate, you need to learn the first two numbers. I said, okay, great. I'll learn those first two. And had no clue about Baroque music. I put in some high note at the end that made no sense whatsoever. The organist goes, I wouldn't do that. So I've learned now, and I don't hide it from my former voice teacher anymore. I then subsequently sang it a couple of times, and he straightened me out on Baroque practice. But yeah, it sounded very Gilbert and Sullivan at the end of so.
Well, and I don't pretend to be a choral scholar in that, I'm not. I probably do some things that are not particularly traditional as far as performance practice, but what I do try to do is find new performances of the work periodically and see how things have changed. I figure if Handel can steal from himself and other composers and put it in his oratorios and operas, I ought to be able to steal a few cadenzas or things like that and incorporate them into my performance. But
yeah. And tell us about your first experience with it.
My first experience with Messiah as a whole work. We sang the Hallelujah chorus when I was in high school, and I was singing alto or whatever. But aside from that, my university, Southern Nazarene University in Oklahoma City, and we did Messiah every November, December, whatever. That was we had a what Cory was talking about at Oklahoma Baptist. They had chapel choir, they're kind of big combined choirs. We called it Choral Society, and every music major had to be in Choral Society. And it was also, there were some community members that would come and sing specifically for Messiah every year. But we rehearsed one evening a week, and we did Messiah every fall semester. That was our Choral Society did one big concert. And until my senior year, they brought in soloists. Usually it was either alumni or professional. I believe faculty from other schools maybe one year did the solos for us. But my senior year, sorry, my Zoom just told me my collar is rubbing my senior year finally.
I was wondering what that was.
I'll try to fix that.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so my senior year.
There we go.
Yay! My senior year, I believe it was my senior year. Students were invited to audition for solos, and I only sang the 4 recitatives right before Glory to God. And I know that my Redeemer liveth. Someone else, I didn't know I was a coloratura soprano at that point. I wasn't sure I was a soprano at that point.
Yeah.
Not that there was ever any question, but I didn't know I didn't know that I wanted to go fast at that point. There was somebody else that sang the heck out of Rejoice, and I got to sing those recits that have always been my favorite. Mm-hmm. And the 2 memories I have from that, I don't really remember the concert itself at all, but when I was working on those recits with my voice teacher, it got to the 3rd recit, and the angel said unto them, fear not, right? And she said, this is the alto angel here. The angel didn't say unto them, fear not. The angel said, fear not. And I have that written in my score that I still have from my freshman year of college, and it is falling apart also. And I have alto angel written above fear not, and I still think of that. I still think of that every time. And in the dress rehearsal, we were singing with orchestra, and I was leaving the chorus to go up to where I was supposed to stand to sing my solo, and the bass player had laid his bass in front of me, and it was dark and I didn't see it, and I kicked the neck of his bass, and he turned and gave me the biggest look, and I was just mortified. Anyway, that other than that, I don't remember
Anything else?
much of that concert at all, but most of the I did get to, a couple of years after I graduated, I did get to go back and sing at the last minute their soprano soloist at SNU. At the last minute, their soprano soloist got sick like 2 days before the concert, and our choir director was still there, and he called me and said, "Can you sing Rejoice?" I said, "I don't know. I'd never sung it before." He said, "How about the 12/8, which is in the back? It's instead of in 4/4, it's in 12/8 and triplets. I love it.
I like that feeling of it a lot.
I love it. Actually, it's in hindsight, it's harder to sing. The melismas are different. I didn't know that then. I just knew it wasn't rapid fire 16th notes, and I had to learn it in 2 days. And I think the 12/8 version was my friend that was a coloratura at that point, our senior year, that sang Rejoice. I believe she did the 12/8. And so Dr. Alexander said, "How about the 12/8?" I said, "I mean, okay, what have I got to lose? What have you got to lose? Because you've got nobody else to do this." So he said, "I believe in you." So I did it, and I'm sure it was fine. I don't really remember that either. But most of that kind of set me on a path, I guess, because most of my what little professional solo singing I have done has been Messiah. If I had to choose one thing to sing, it would be a toss forever and never sing anything else. It would be a toss up between Messiah and the Mozart Requiem. I'm not sure which one would win, but anyway, I'm going to echo what Cory said. It suits my voice, what my voice likes to do. And I've kind of grown into, I struggled with, I know that my Redeemer liveth as a 22-year-old, but my, age and further study and figuring out that I have a chest voice and things like that. Yeah, I did. I did grow into it. So anyway, it's a favorite for me too.
It's a great piece of music, and it's so funny. I've actually never sung it with a college. I've never conducted it. I've only conducted it once with a college when I was over at Pacific Lutheran, but never in a chorus member or as a soloist sung it with a college. And so it's mostly been kind of, little churches here and there, or, some symphony stuff. And so, and what I like about it is that it is approachable for the amateur choir and the, not necessarily the amateur instrumentalist. I've done that with some, instrumental ensembles that were not as professional as the one that we got for this. And so that was kind of hard because the music is just difficult for the strings.
Cory could talk about that too.
Yeah, when Ann and I were in Texas for the dedication of, I was at First Methodist Church in Granbury, Texas, and a good friend of mine, Suzanne Kate, was at Acton Methodist Church as the choir director, about 15 miles apart, if that. And we decided that we would join the forces of our choirs. We both had sizable choirs, and that we would hire a chamber orchestra. And so, and I said, my only caveat is that to save money, we were going to split conducting duties. She would conduct all of the anything that I had to sing on. And I told her, I said, I'll conduct not everything else. I'll conduct several other things. I said, the only thing is I want to conduct the Symphonia. That's my only caveat, is I'm conducting the Symphonia. And we had just rehearsed in the afternoon, just rehearsed. And I dropped a stick, and it was like trying to pull them through molasses. And I literally had to lean over the stand and yell not yell, but speak sternly and audibly, I'm sure, to the audience, at the cellist
Oh,
to get the cellist to move. And I thought I was, if I'd had a spare baton, I might have impaled him with the one in my hand.
a chalice on "Oh Thou That Tellest Good Tidings to Zion." I clearly started in 2, and we ended in 6. I could not get it to go fast. Now that was not the issue with this. I want to pivot to kind of what we had to do with this project. About 6 months ago, when we got the grant for this, we didn't know musically what we could do, and so we were trying to kind of keep forces as small as possible, and so didn't know how many people stringed and brass, and we did again. The science was not conclusive on how far we could sit from each other and all that kind of stuff, and so we decided rather than doing a big recording session with the choir and then with with the choir soloists and the orchestra all at one time and have like 100 people in a room for 4 hours. We did it separately, which was fun, but also had its challenges. So we recorded the orchestra first in August, and then we recorded the solos in December. And so the funny thing is, I don't think all 4 of the soloists had even signed on to do it when we were making the recording. So we were like kind of quasi guessing about, tempos that might work. And so, y'all can just, again, kind of talk about this process of how, basically, I don't want to call it, karaoke Messiah, but there's a certain aspect to it because you are singing to a track and things like that. And so kind of, Anne, why don't you speak to that for a second?
I think the hardest ones to kind of get the hang of were the recitatives. I mean, and it's just kind of the nature of recitative is that I know you as a conductor were probably just singing it in your head and, dead beats and conduct whatever. And I'm sure that's a party without having actually hearing it. But my Rejoice and the Come Unto Him, the duet with Holly, those just kind of get started and kind of sail along. There's not really much.
Mm-hmm. Or you hope.
Ideally.
Keep going.
Yeah, and they felt fine. I really didn't have much to deal with there. But I was there when Cory was recording Refiner's Fire, and that was
again
that was more that was more complicated because it's just yeah. Yeah.
Cory?
Yeah, it's a challenge, Refiner's Fire offers its own challenges because you have those tempo changes.
Mm-hmm.
That are
that's hard with a live orchestra.
It is hard with a live orchestra, but with that work in particular, or that aria, I think really is such a partnership, really a three-way partnership between the singer conductor
and the cello,
and and being able to make corrections if it's pretty easy to be able to catch the conductor's eye and indicate that I want to go faster, or
or that you need time to breathe, or whatever.
Or that I need time to breathe, or whatever. I mean, that one is, for me, Refiner's Fire is really, that one, and Why Do the Nations, one of the later arias, those have a right tempo. And only one.
Yeah.
For me. And it's usually faster, slightly faster than the traditional tempo. That allows me to really free the voice a bit, and it takes care of the breath as well. But it definitely offered some challenges. I still wish I could go back and take another run at that one measure. You know which one I'm talking about.
Nobody will remember. But
you want perfection, you go to the recording studio.
Yeah, we could spend 40 hours I'm not interested in that. You know, what was hard for me is that we recorded the two tenor arias for a different tenor who actually likes them faster than I do because of his ability to do all that he's really good at. And
Totally
so
different voices. Yeah.
yeah, and we're very different voices. And so what's funny is that well, one, we had a computer malfunction like a month after the recording of the strings, and so we lost some material. So like the tenor rested at the end. It's just me singing a cappella. So that was nice. That little computer. So a little behind the scenes there. But and then the other cool thing is that because it was a track, I could actually go into a software and give myself just a little bit of more space to sing into some of the rest. So next time, if we ever have to do this again, we'll give Cory some space.
Look, I may be a baritone, but I still want my high notes. I need time for my high notes. I gotta let those breathe.
You know, and so I want to finish with, you know, kind of what, you know, an oratorio is. You know, we've got, you know, lots of people who are watching Handel's Messiah. They know mostly part one, and then most everybody in America knows the Hallelujah chorus. You know, what's funny is that Americans value Messiah and the Hallelujah chorus almost more than the Brits do, which is, you know, and it's their product they sent over here a couple hundred years ago. And so the cool thing about that piece is that the American premiere was actually at Trinity Wall Street, which we, you know, bought their organ. Yeah. So I mean, it's really cool. It was the first.
I have a friend that sings at Trinity, or has sung. I don't know if she's still there.
The first North American, you know, premiere of that. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, some cool history there. And so, you know, an oratorio is kind of a quasi, you know, unstaged opera, park and bark. But, you know, Messiah is weird in the sense that it tells a story, but doesn't tell a story, or there's not characters. And so, you know, but there's been some adaptation of, you know, there's Vienna State Opera did an adaptation of it where it was a staged version, and it had, kind of weird vignettes and like really weird and dark stuff that had nothing to do with the biblical story. And then I saw one in Seattle that was really, really neat that had kind of juxtaposed the part one, most of the part one story with a family who was kind of struggling with, you know, faith in Christmas. And so there was some kind of cool things there. And so when y'all are digging into, you know, these solos, or if you're conducting it or playing it or whatever y'all do, I mean, what kind of, you know, vision or story, or because, you know, just in the part one, you know, the bass arias are very different. You know, there's a rage aria, there's something that's a little more contemplative. And so kind of how do you get yourself in the right frame of mind for those, Cory?
Well, you know, yeah, this is particularly tricky. I think it's tricky this year also, because I think if you think about the arc, the dramatic arc of the entire work as applied to 2020, you know, I think is quite interesting, because, you know, I think the aria that I sing about, where I say, you know, for he is like a refiner's fire, in that anticipation, we treat that as an anticipation of something good, and then how does refiner's fire fit into that? And I feel like so much of what we as a nation have all been enduring right now is sort of being run through that refiner's fire, and realizing that the later sections of Messiah are so redemptive in their nature. They're about what happens after you've passed through. And I think when now we're dealing with hopefully seeing the end of this pandemic, at least on the horizon, and seeing all of that, seeing the advent of vaccines that could sort of free us to live more normal lives, more fulfilling lives. I think there's a real parallel to, or it's really apropos of where we are today. As far as the dramatic effect of how I really do kind of approach this as if I'm singing a character, especially in these first acts. I find it hard to believe, or hard not to sing the words of Malachi the prophet as Malachi the prophet. And so when I say, "Thus says the Lord," or "Thus saith the Lord of hosts," it takes on to me. I try to think as he would be thinking, in that terms of offering God's correction to God's people, and um, and guidance to God's people. And yes, it's ominous, but there's also promise
Mm-hmm.
in that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And
Um, yeah, one of my favorite Messiah performances in Fort Worth, which is where most of my Messiah experience had been, is at Broadway Baptist Church. They always did. They used mostly the Fort Worth Symphony players and the soloists and a lot of the choir that did the Bass Hall performances, with the symphony performances, which were the Baptist Seminary chorus and faculty
it's
soloists, and
world famous. I mean, they've been doing it,
every year for
for
however long.
years.
Yeah. Well, so Broadway Baptist was always just kind of mixed into that, and they do most. I mean, they do most of the music that's kind of traditionally done, but there are always several choruses and a few solos, and that are just not
Done or
not really traditionally done. But most of America probably doesn't know um, a lot of these choruses that aren't like "In the Glory of the Lord" and "Hallelujah," But they what is not sung is read by church members, and so you get the entire text from beginning of prophecy. All the part one is all the all of the prophecy, which I keep forgetting until I start practicing every year and practicing those rejoice and come unto him, and those things are part of part two, I guess. But all of that stuff at the beginning it sounds like he's coming, he's here, he's coming. It's prophecy. It's however many hundreds or thousand years before.
yeah.
It's not there yet. But all of those words come back in the New Testament. All of those words are remembered because they've been promised Jesus for thousands of years. And then when he, in part two, and then the passion part, there's so much that harkens back to those Old Testament prophecies. And that was always, I was always really intrigued every year when I got to hear the Broadway, when you hear all of those texts that you're not used to hearing. You're used to, like, your ear can hear what chorus is coming next or what solo is coming next because you hear it so much. But then hearing the actual text and the progression of prophecy to his life, to his death and resurrection, and then that first chord of "Worthy is the Lamb," it makes me cry every single time.
Yeah.
Well,
Because, especially when I've heard all of that text before, and like you said earlier, that it's a story, but it's not. It's the story of Jesus, right? Prophecy and promise, and coming, and then the promise of his return, and it's just cool. It's just really cool knowing all of that and not being able to hear all of it always.
In a way, the idea of it being a story, but not, now this may not resonate with some people, but it may, but with those people that have some background in singing, it's a bit like a choral, almost like a choral song cycle. And that there is a unifying element that carries you from beginning to end, much like you would find in Schubert's Die Schöne Müllerin or something like that, where you have a real progression of emotion that leads you to some conclusion.
Yeah.
And I see that here as well.
And I think he wrote it that way purposeful, because he had other oratorios and other religious works that were, that were character driven. He had a passion text, and he had, his Samson, which outsold, Messiah 10-1. In regards to repeat performances, it definitely has characters. And so I think there was a sense of, let's do something different here. Or maybe it was hard pressed maybe the subject matter was too big to make a finite story in, the 2 or 3 weeks or whatever the legend is, But anyway, well, I want to thank you guys for being here and taking time away from family and holidays. And so we're going to end like we do, and we're going to listen to a recording of Anne singing Rejoice Greatly. And so again, thanks for joining us, and we appreciate you. And it was great to work with you guys and great to hear you sing. So thanks.
Had a great time.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks so much.